Just like most things during the Trump era, coronavirus is now highly politicized. And just the latest example for the president to launch even some personal attacks against those who criticize the handling of it. In this case, many of those people, officials whose administration has vocally said they will promise to work with. In that list are governors of some of the hardest hit states, New York and Washington state among them. He called Jay Inslee of Washington a snake. He tweeted at Andrew Cuomo saying it's Cuomo who's politically weaponizing the situation. But of course, it goes without being said, the president is playing politics as usual. Now, I'm going to quote here from a piece in the New York Times that speaks directly to this. Quote, "Whose side is the Trump administration on? Based on every public appearance we've seen so far, whether it's from a cabinet member or the director of the Centers for Disease Control or the president himself, the answer is clear, not the public's. President Trump, hell-bent on re-election, is focusing on massaging numbers and silencing bearers of bad news. That's what autocrats do, and it's endangering lives." I want to bring in our guest, Jennifer Senior. She an opinion columnist for the New York Times, and those words were hers in a piece yesterday. Jennifer, thank you. In reading your piece, I came across a scary conversation you had with a Yale epidemiologist who lays out, and their lab is kind of, I guess, playing this out here, just how widespread this could be and how fatal the coronavirus is. I mean, and then after you convey the conversation, let's put it in contrast to what the administration's telling us.
Oh, yeah. What I didn't do is write that his estimates were a lot less frightening than, for example, people up at Harvard. There are people there who were estimating more like 300,000 fatalities, if things go horribly wrong. It's the president's job, I think, to convey the potential magnitude of the problem and what we're reckoning with. This is science. It doesn't have to be politicized. There are calm ways to convey what contagion looks like, how we can best stem the spread of a disease. I'm not sure how we got here, frankly. And facts are facts. Science is science. This isn't the sort of thing that should lead to this kind of ugly dispute.
And a lot of our viewers are from the metropolitan area. You wrote a piece early last week that, heck, give us Rudy right now, the Rudy of 9/11, who brought not just competency, but also reassurance and, heaven forbid, some modesty to the situation. He was a rallying cry at the point. Obama and Christie, that was Hurricane Sandy, where there wasn't red or blue teams. They were pulling in the same direction. But I got to tell you, this morning, I saw the testimony of the CDC director, Robert Redfield, and he was asked at one point about building a wall, which the president tweeted about, which would be important in fighting the virus. I'm not sure exactly how. And he said, no, there's nothing to that. And I thought when I saw that, Jennifer, oh, that guy's going to get sidelined. Just like we've seen anyone, even when they're proven correct, that's the last we'll see of them because they're not speaking the same narrative. It's amazing what we've gotten used to, but immediately my first reaction when I heard him say that was, well, nice seeing you.
Right. Well, I mean, he's got two songs that he's playing, right? Build a wall, build a wall. I can't see any way that one can draw a line from that to the present situation. He also is sort of perseverating. He keeps talking over and over again about how he was so shrewd in shutting everything down so that we could no longer, go to and from China. How long can you keep repeating that when clearly the problem right now in the United States is community spread? I don't know how you're rolling the dialogue forward. I don't know how you're helping better prepare the public, because we now have, of course, very basic questions about protocols and etiquette and how nervous we should be and whether a kid should be in school and, how appropriate it is to be in restaurants and public spaces. If you had a regular president who simply could, as any human would during a time of crisis, look at people and say, look, it's frightening, it's scary. I mean, if you just think about Giuliani right after September 11th, sitting there and saying, this is awful. We lost people, more people than we can bear. But you want to know what? I'm not that scared because New Yorkers are great. We're going to get through this. We've got everybody on the case. We've got 600 people downtown and 600 people in Liberty. He just laid it all out. Why we can't just have a calm exposition of what steps are being done is utterly beyond me.
We learned, Jennifer, that there were advisors within the administration who told the president that seniors should not be flying right now, and they didn't want to hear of it, and they didn't communicate it to us. And like many people, my parents fall into that group. Talk about how that absence of transparency or politicizing things with a calculus for 2020 is going to be a real problem here when we need credibility as this thing goes from bad to worse.
Well, I can tell you exactly how, and I think that the British medical journal, The Lancet, laid it all out, which is at a moment like this, countries are probably going to have to choose between having a reasonably healthy population and a reasonably healthy economy. You probably, for the short term, can't have both. But Trump wants both, because if you're a candidate and you're running, you want to run on a healthy economy. What's strange to me is that in times of crisis, presidents usually become enormously popular. If he were going to just be thinking only politically, he could simply make leadership and calm and self-possession things that are very foreign to him. But he could simply walk us through a public health crisis and say, you know what, we'll take care of the markets. We'll find stimulus packages. We'll find ways to, protect businesses, to protect the poorest among us. He's not doing any of that.
When majority, by the way, Americans were stranded off the shore of California, it was naked. The calculation that was going on into what to do with the population after we've learned, all of us, the mistakes that were made where you allowed a problem to fester and more people got infected consequentially. This was the president in terms of how he would decide what to do, even knowingly, with fellow Americans.
They would like to have the people come off. I'd rather have the people stay because I like the numbers being where they are.
So Jennifer, to my point, and you write about this in your piece, obviously we live in a siloed country informationally and in every other way, but there's an inevitability that this isn't going to stay in the blue cities or blue states. This is going to morph. I mean, look at, the Putz Matt Gates, with a gas mask, and now he's quarantined. This is going to go to different parts of this country, red and blue alike. The polls right now seem to say that depending on where you align yourself politically, you'll either approve or disapprove. I think that changes because this isn't political at a certain point. This is changing your entire life and the habits that you're used to because of a virus that, while it was never not going to come to our shores, it certainly could have been prepared for a lot better, and we could have been more honestly spoken to. Do you think there's an inevitability between some people that will forgive everything of his that won't forgive this?
I mean, my inclination is to say that more people, as they get exposure to people becoming sick, as it starts happening in their communities, as their own governors start declaring states of emergency, and as their own members of Congress become more energized, it is conceivable that people will stop treating this, they'll stop poo-pooing it as, oh, it's just another flu. We know it's more deadly than a flu. In the case of Trump supporters, if I look at the kind of emails that I was getting in response to my column yesterday and today, and the Twitter replies, confirmation bias is very strong. People find their reasons for wanting to support the person that they support. And you can easily see people, this whole argument morphing into something else, that Trump is still doing everything right, but it's the Democrats who are holding up the kind of emergency response.
The thing that I'm most concerned about, but I think that we have, if we act like yesterday, a chance to at least mitigate it, is you write in your column about the situation in Italy right now, of which I'm pretty familiar with, and specifically in Lombardy, where the intensive care units are overrun right now. We are not ready to handle potentially the inflow of patients. We don't have the amount of quarantines that we need to have set up. We don't have the supplies we need. And what happens if the medical professionals, doctors and nurses, as they will, get infected themselves, and the multiplier as to those who will be taken out of this? To me, that's the biggest worry right now. The people on the front lines for this, they're not ready. I'm not hearing a lot about that in Washington as to what to do about it.
There are two things to say about that. I mean, one is the reassuring thing is doctors come out of retirement to help in moments like this, right? People do mobilize. The very worrying, concerning piece is the presidential leadership part. If hospitals are strained to capacity, if people are not being told to behave calmly, you don't want it to be a free-for-all. You want people to leave food on the shelves. You want people to be good to their neighbors. You want everybody to behave decently.
But as you said, and in every answer, it comes back to the leadership, the transparency, the credibility, and everything in between. And to me, at least, that's the thing. I don't know how we get around. But Jennifer Senior, opinion columnist with the Times, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And up next, we take a break from coronavirus, and instead we'll check in on the 2020 race as voters in 6 states head to the polls today. Is Biden's momentum growing? We'll discuss next.